Hello, my Renew fam. I want to dive today into the topic of grief. With the holidays approaching, we see this topic arising more and more because people have lost loved ones and they are wondering how they're going to navigate the holidays without this person physically being here. And so, although grief is not a fun topic to discuss, it is a necessary topic to discuss because even in my business, my therapy clients and coaching clients have all had questions about grief. How long should I grieve? Am I grieving properly? Should I still be feeling these emotions that I'm feeling right now? And they're very valid questions. So today I want to dive into the phases that we go through when we experience a loss. There are three main phases that we experience when we lose a loved one. And sometimes we use these words interchangeably because they're all intertwined, but they all have different meanings. The first being mourning. Mourning is the outward public display of emotion in response to experiencing a loss. And most times we see mourning at a funeral, or what we call now homegoing service. Typically or traditionally people would dress up in black. They wear different colors now, but typically you would dress up in your black, and then you would see the public outward display of emotion, whether it was crying or wailing, whatever that looked like. That's what mourning is. It's just the outward public display of your response to someone's passing. The second phase is bereavement. Bereavement is the period of sadness that you feel after experiencing a loss. And so why I wanted to mention those two things, mourning and bereavement, what they have in common is that they are both temporal. Mourning doesn't last forever. And bereavement is just for a period, which means it has to cease at some point. But grief is an internal process. And because grief is an internal process, it does somewhat incorporate mourning and bereavement in a part of the process. But grief is an internal process from start to finish in relation to someone's passing. And what I love about the word that is an eternal process, it means that it's ongoing. It's ongoing, which means that grief essentially never really ends. And the reason that grief doesn't come to a complete end is because another way I like to explain grief is that it's a process, but it's a process of what? Is a process of continually adjusting to this person no longer being here in the physical. And as long as you're living life, you're going to be constantly readjusting to the absence of this person's presence. But before we dive into that, I want to quickly review the stages of grief. Now, some people say there's 5 stages of grief. Some say that there are 7 stages of grief. But the reason I don't subscribe to the 7 stages of grief is because there is some discrepancy on what the 7th stage is. So I typically stick to the 5 stages of grief. But what I do like about the 7 stages, that it mentions shock. The 7 stages of grief mentions shock as being the first phase when the 5 stages does not. And shock, as we know, is the initial reaction that you feel, or the emotion that you feel when you hear of someone's passing. You may feel shock. It's the numbness that you feel. And after that comes the denial. You can't believe that it's happening. You're not quite ready to accept that this is happening. Then after denial comes anger. I'm angry that this is happening. Then bargaining. Why is this happening? What if we have done this? What if I could have done this? What if this happened? What if that happened? And we begin to start bargaining if we could possibly change that the person is no longer here. After bargaining, you may experience depression, that hopelessness, that deep sadness, realizing that this person is no longer here. You can't get them back. No matter what you may have bargained in your mind of trying to get them back, they're not coming back. And then the final stage, and I say final in air quotes because the final stage is acceptance. And acceptance is the ability to say, okay, I know that they're gone. That doesn't mean that I'm okay with them being gone. I know that they're gone, and I know I have to, again, readjust my life to continue living and to continue moving forward. I know that they're gone. That doesn't mean that you won't still feel some emotion around it. It just means that you've come to terms to know they're physically gone. There's nothing I can do to bring them back. And I'm at a period that I'm okay enough to continue functioning and living through life. But the reason why I say acceptance is not the quote unquote final stage is because you can continually go through the cycles of grief. Although there's no 5 to 7 stages of grief, you don't necessarily go through the stages of grief in that exact same order. And you can go through the order more than one time. So today you may be at a point of acceptance. You know grandma's gone, mom is gone. But then a month later, especially during holiday time, now you feel angry again. Now you feel sadness again. And then that's the part that bothers some people because they think, well, I'm done with this. I should have been finished with this. I was fine a few months ago, but now I'm triggered. And that's why, again, grief is a process. It's a continual adjusting to that person's absence. And as long as you're living, you're going to be continually adjusting to their absence. Anytime a milestone happens in your life, if you didn't have kids before and you're having your first child and mom is not here to see it, you're going to start feeling those stages of grief again. It may be anger. I'm angry she's not here. You're getting married and dad can't walk you down the aisle. You had this great accomplishment that your best friend would have loved to be there for. And so as long as you're living, you're going to be readjusting to their absence. And that's okay. But I want to end this by saying there is no set time to complete your grief process. There is no set timeline. So no one can tell you how long you should grieve. And no one even has the right to tell you how to grieve. I even tell my clients this. I say, I can't tell you how to grieve, but I can tell you if you're grieving in a healthy manner. Are you doing things that are detrimental to your grieving process? Are you doing things to help you move forward? So there is no set timeline. There's no way you can say I should be finished grieving after a year, after 5 years, after 10 years. Why? Because it's a process, and the definition of process is ongoing. It's an ongoing action. Process is an action word, and it's an ongoing action. And again, as long as you're living, you're going to be going through that process of readjusting. So give yourself some grace in this holiday season. It's okay to feel what you feel. It's okay to have and express emotion as long as you're doing it in a healthy manner and you're not hurting yourself or hurting anyone else. Then you are okay to grieve. No matter how long it's been, no matter who the person was that passed away, you have the right to grieve. You have the space to grieve. So you need to give yourself grace to grieve. But while you're grieving the person's loss or their physical absence, don't forget to reflect on what they did leave behind. The memories, the love, and the space that they held in your life, in your family. Focus on that. Don't focus on what was taken or what you perceive was taken. Focus on what was left behind.